Hello everybody, this is Lucy Nathanson, child therapist and founder of �confidentchildren.co.uk. So today I'm going to be interviewing Kelly. Kelly is a parent of a child with selective mutism, and she has put together a selective mutism summit, the first selective mutism summit to my knowledge, called 𝗱𝗻. So I'm really excited because Kelly will be sharing her story with us about her experience of having a child with selective mutism and a bit of information about the summit as well. So I'm really excited. Thank you for being here, Kelly.
Thank you so much for interviewing me and getting to learn more about the summit. It's always great to talk to you. You do such a wonderful job educating parents, and I'm truly, truly thankful for everything you've done to help us too.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's so my pleasure. You know, we're all about raising awareness of selective mutism.
Yeah.
So first of all, could you please tell me and our viewers a bit about your story of having a child with selective mutism?
Yeah, of course. I'll try to keep it as short as possible, but it can get to be a long story. So I have 3 kids. Our oldest is the one that has selective mutism. So that kind of already put us at a disadvantage because we didn't know what was typical for a child, being that she was our first. So when she was little, she seemed to be a typically developing baby and toddler. She crawled at like 6 months. She was walking around 10 months. She seemed to be talking and babbling just fine around 12 months. And then she even seemed really academic. I mean, she figured out the alphabet by the time she was 15 months. She was reading at 18 months. It was crazy, all of the academics she had. So we're like, cool, we have like a super smart baby. And then when she turned a year, we brought her to a photographer because we wanted to do some of those cute little 1-year-old pictures. And the photographer really struggled to get her to smile. Again, we didn't really think anything of it. We just thought maybe she's just doesn't like this lady, even though this poor lady, she at one point had a reindeer on her head and was like dancing around, trying anything to get our daughter to crack a smile, and she just wouldn't. Again, we didn't know anything was off with that. And then when she turned around 2, we noticed she still wasn't talking to our extended family. Again, she talked to us just fine. But when we'd get together with grandparents, with her cousins, we'd say like, oh man, Clara said this, this, and this the other day. And then she's just nothing around our family. So we thought, well, they're from out of town, maybe because we don't see them enough, she's just shy or slow to warm to them. Again, we didn't really know. When she was 3, we started her in preschool. And we did mention to her teacher that, you know, it just seems like she doesn't really talk to others. She hates getting her picture taken. We're not quite sure what's going on there. And her teacher at the time was a very experienced teacher. It was actually her last year of teaching before she retired. So she's seen a lot of kids. And she said, well, usually if a child is very academic, it just takes them a little bit longer for their social side of their brain to catch up. That made sense to us. Like, okay, we'll see how this year goes. And hopefully soon she'll start communicating with teachers and peers. And unfortunately, that just never happened. She didn't speak at all in school that first year. And so we started the next year. It was a new teacher. So we thought, well, maybe she's a little older. She is clearly talking to us fine. Maybe she just needs a new teacher. But same thing again happened. Still wasn't talking to anybody. Nobody really said it was a problem. And then I just got to a point where I was kind of over it. I was over her not talking. I didn't understand what was going on. So I told the teacher, which looking back wasn't probably the best thing to say, but I said, if she doesn't respond to your question, walk away from her. She's not going to get what you're asking her. Again, I didn't know what was going on. And so her teacher was very sweet. And she's like, I'm not going to do that. So she still attended to our daughter as she had been before, and still gave her the things that she wanted, even if she didn't speak. But then we started using like a reward chart with our daughter. And again, this is before we knew anything about SM. And we worked with the teacher and said, if she says at least a word to you, please let me know and we will mark it on some sort of reward chart. And eventually, after about a month of doing that, she did start speaking a little bit more. So that was, it made me feel a little bit better that she was getting to the point where she was at with speaking. And then randomly, I happened to be working at a children's clinic, and a pair of twins came in with a diagnosis of selective mutism. And I had never heard this term before, so it kind of piqued my interest. I was like learning about new diagnoses and just other things that are going on in the world. So I Googled it, and once I read that definition, it was like somebody had described my daughter. It was amazing. Like it's like the world stopped turning for a moment. It's like, oh my gosh, this is my daughter. And I literally got up and ran to my pediatrician working that day. And I said, I think my daughter has selective mutism. I'm like, tell me what it's like with these twins. He's like, well, I don't know if it's a real thing. We're kind of working on it. I'm like, I really think my daughter has this. And he's like, oh, just wait until kindergarten. She'll probably outgrow it, or she's just shy right now. Okay, just didn't sit right with me. I'm kind of I like to get things moving in the right direction. And so that night I did all the research I could on selective mutism. I was talking to my husband about it. He's like, yeah, this sounds right. So we found the one selective mutism specialist in our state, and we started therapy. And it was one of those things where you think that, yes, we solved it. We're going to go to therapy and we're going to get all the answers and she's going to be cured and life will move on. And I really didn't understand the depth of selective mutism until we started therapy and until we realized just how severe she was. And that it wasn't just the selective mutism, it was like sensory processing issues, it was separation anxiety, it was skin picking. All of these things were intermingled with each other, and it took us a while to start breaking it down and getting her the help she needed.
How old was your daughter when you started therapy?
So she started therapy around 4.5 years old. So we were very lucky in that we found out what was going on early, so that it wasn't necessarily ingrained in her,
right.
That way of getting by without talking.
Yeah, that's great. And it's such a relatable story, because it's so common that parents are the ones who have to kind of dig deeper and get the term selective mutism, and to really take action themselves. It's such a shame that other conditions have so much awareness, and children are identified as having that condition relatively quickly, whereas with SM it's usually this kind of journey that parents have to go on. Right. And they really have to be like action takers, as you were, and really kind of sometimes even fight for help for their child.
And what I've learned too is a lot of this can be genetic component. And so you think there could be a parent out there that had this as a child, or it has some social anxiety, so they might not be the go-getter type that some of us other parents are. And so their child may not be getting the help they need because they just, like, their parents aren't ready. So I feel for those parents too. And it does take a lot to kind of push back, especially to a doctor and to teachers and to other therapists. But it really can make the biggest difference in your child.
Absolutely. Yeah, I hear all the time teachers say, in a well-meaning way, just give them time. Sure, they'll grow out of it. They just need a bit of time. And it's just like, no, we need to take action like as quickly as possible, because SM is so treatable. It's a condition that children can overcome, but only if the steps are taken. It's not that they just kind of grow out of it. So what was your journey in terms of the therapy? What happened from that moment of kind of starting the therapy?
So the first time, it was just my husband and I and the therapist, just to really talk about our daughter and to make sure that this was actually selective mutism. And she agreed with us 100%. We were able to get her started in therapy within a couple of weeks. Thankfully, at that time, there wasn't quite the waiting list out there as there is now. And I just remember that first time sitting with my daughter in like around all these games and toys, and the therapist was very nice, and our daughter just wasn't moving. I mean, her eyes were down in a way. She was frozen. She wouldn't talk to me. She clearly wouldn't talk to the therapist. She couldn't even look at the therapist. And I got honestly scared, because at school, I didn't know this stuff was going on. And at home, she's crazy. She's talking nonstop and is being silly and running around. And playing games and all of that. And so it was like I had two different kids, like my daughter at home and now my daughter who I've never seen before. And I didn't know what I needed to do as a parent. And so a lot of our first few weeks was just the SM therapist teaching me how to interact with my daughter. I'm sure other parents out there have rescued their children unknowingly. And I had been doing that. I had been leading my daughter into school or into the grocery store or into grandma's house. I had been answering for her. If people asked, how old are you? I'd say, oh, she's 3, or her favorite color is pink, or whatever the case was, because as a parent, you want to protect your child. And so when I would see her just in fear or not being able to speak and the other person like kind of looking at her a little weird, I would just jump in. And so I really had to step back from that and live in that awkwardness, which for me is, I'm a pretty quick processor. And so it was really hard for me to do that, but it had to be done. And I think even having her start walking into places before me, it made her realize that I have to be in charge of this room that I'm going into. And I had to let her do that, which again was hard. I mean, there would be like doing little dances outside the door at times because I'm like, no, you go. She's like, no, you go. And we're just trying to get somebody first. So yeah, it was really a lot of me understanding where the selective mutism was coming from. When we were in therapy, we really had to start the very beginning. And that was with eye contact. So whenever our daughter made eye contact with the therapist, she would get a little token. Luckily, our daughter's very reward motivated. So we ate a lot of ice cream those first few months of therapy, but we just really had to do what we could to lower that anxiety. And once I feel that people understand that it is that anxiety component, you can understand why they're not talking. She wasn't being defiant. She wasn't being rude. She just really couldn't speak. Her brain was not allowing that to happen. So it did take us quite a while to get to a point where she would look at the therapist, and then we had to work on her speaking to me in front of the therapist. And I think after about 3 months or so, she started, I think, whispering to the therapist. So again, my daughter's very smart and she likes to show that off. So we had a lot of flashcards that we would use of words that she could read. And so she would whisper them. But unfortunately, it wasn't working out with the therapist. She just felt like she kind of did all she could to help our daughter, and we weren't making the progress she was hoping. So we were given a couple choices. We could either do an intensive camp out of state, or we could go at it ourselves. And in our life at that time, I had a 2-year-old potty training and I was pregnant. There was no way we could go to an intensive camp. So I decided, yep, I guess we're going to do this on our own. And I grabbed the bull by the horns and we went for a long ride.
Wow. Woo, what a what a journey. Wow, it's so so great to hear the story of getting that help. And as you said, it's so important to have that support. You know, if a parent can access a selective mutism specialist, that is, of course, the ideal situation. But at the same time, there are ways to get the help, you know, through educating themselves on SM, you know, books, videos, and so on. And it's really important for parents to really, you know, like what I don't want parents to think is, okay, right, I will just start rewarding my child for doing this, and, you know, just it's really important to pitch the goal at an achievable level for your child. That is really key, so that the child can do whatever the goal is. Because as we know with SM, it's all a small steps approach. And I think where sometimes people go wrong is they are a bit over ambitious and try to get the child to do something they want their child to do, but the child can't do yet. And then that's when it often has a negative effect. So I suppose it's so hard for parents, but that's, I suppose, the beauty of having a therapist to be able to identify what can the child do and how should we take this.
Yeah, and we did struggle at first because our therapist would have her like pay for something at the store or put something even just on the counter. And to me, I'm thinking, oh, that sounds easy enough. She just has to put something on the counter. I remember the first time we ever tried, I bought her a little thing of whiteout because we were doing an art project. I'm like, just put this up on the counter. And she lost it. I mean, on the floor, screaming and crying because she couldn't do it. And so again, that's where I was like, wow, this is way more severe than I thought possible. So we really had to take it even further back. And so again, yeah, like you mentioned, like parents just kind of need to know where their children are. And what I realized too that I needed to be doing was talk to my child about it. Because for me, again, with my first child, I really didn't know how much she could process. But if I actually asked her, hey, how hard would it be for you to set this on the counter? She could be like, that is too hard. I can't do that. So we could break it down further. So it'd be, can you hand it to me and then I put it on the counter? Or can you put it further down the counter and have the conveyor belt take it? So all these little steps you have to take backwards, and just talking with them about it. If something's super easy, then we'll go a step up. So yeah, just having an open communication so that your child knows that you're not going to be forcing them to do something they can't do. It's going to trust them that you're trying to help them and not make things worse.
Absolutely.
Again, we want to protect our kids, and we don't want to see them throwing themselves on the floor. We want to be able to give them an opportunity to do a challenge and feel good about themselves, and to see mom and dad happy and proud of them and want to keep doing it again and again and again.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's so great to hear your story. Oh, my Mia. Do you know Mia?
Yes, I've been following
She's just
her
behind the laptop. Let me just move her out the way. She's like just about to walk. Say hello to everyone.
Hi, Mia.
She's just about to jump on the yeah, she sometimes disturbs my sessions. The parents always love it, and the children do as well.
Yeah.
That's great. And so tell me about how did you, after starting the therapy and then you took the bull by the horns and started doing it yourself, what happened from there? How did you start working with the school?
So I really educated myself as much as possible. I bought a bunch of books, and I started a support group for other parents, because who better to learn how to help somebody with an SM child is from somebody who's helped their own SM child. And so that really helped make me feel like I wasn't alone, number one, and that my concerns were valid, and that just having somebody who's been there give you advice. So that really, really helped understand where we were at and the potential of where we could go. So I think a lot of times as parents, we get in the what if mode of what happens if she has to go to the bathroom and can't? What if she needs to get a job in the future and can't? How is she gonna meet a significant other and get married? And like all of these things start circling your brain. And so talking with somebody who's been through it can just kind of take that away and say, you know what? We're going to take it one day at a time. Yeah. We're going to take it one challenge at a time. And then you're going to start seeing the results. So we just try to do as many different exposures as we could, again, at her level. So we didn't just jump into having somebody at the store ask her favorite color. We started with, what's your name? So I would ask her in the truck when we're driving places, at home, if we're on a walk, I would ask her, what's your name? What's your name? What's your name? And she would answer each time. I would reward her each time. We usually did, like, if you answer it 10 times, you get a Brave ticket. If you get 5 Brave tickets, you get ice cream, something like that. So she had to work for it, but getting her comfortable with knowing that she could say her name to me in different situations helped. And then we would go into the grocery store, and as I'm pushing her in the cart, what's your name? What's your name? What's your name? She would keep telling me, and I would strategically wait until somebody was walking by us and ask her. So then she was using her voice in front of somebody. So she didn't even really know this was going on, but I was trying to be strategic with it to see if she could. And then I could say, hey, did you know you just told me your name in front of that person? I feel like the biggest issue our daughter had, at least, with not wanting to speak, was she didn't know what the outcome was going to be. What's going to happen when somebody hears my voice? Is the world going to collapse around me? It's like, no, it will continue on. We will continue going down the aisle of the grocery store, and we will be fine. So as she realized that over and over and over again, it really increased her confidence. And then we got to a point a while down the road where we would bring a little card that had 3 questions on it. We would go up to a random person and say, could you please ask my daughter these questions? We're working on our Brave Talk. And that, again, over and over and over again, it gave her that confidence. And most of the time people couldn't hear her, and that was fine. She still did it. So again, as parents start doing these things, even though it might not be the response you were hoping for, you're maybe hoping that they would say their name loud enough for somebody to hear, but if they at least say their name, that's a win. They said it. And then you can work on increasing the volume. One of the parents that I had met, she said they use that, "Did you get that?" to somebody else. If they like, "Could you hear what she said?" And if not, then can you say just a little bit louder? And then that helped as well. So then my daughter knew, well, I don't want to say my name 3 times. I just want to say it once. So she would start projecting her voice a little bit more. So again, just knowing all the little steps you can take to get to a point, then you start seeing some really amazing results.
Yeah, it's all about just practicing, really practicing at their level, something they can do, repeating until it's easy.
Yeah.
And practicing the next thing, repeat till it's
Right.
easy. It just, as you say, after a while, their identity of not being able to do it gets looser and looser and looser until their new identity is that they can do it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen overnight.
No. Yeah, it's definitely a marathon and not a sprint. And I think that is a really important thing to remember, because again, when I went into my first therapy session, I thought, oh, 6 weeks, you're going to have her speaking to you? Easy peasy. We're going to be out of here in no time. But I mean, years later, you're still doing some of these things, and that is what SM is. It's a lot, but they can overcome it, like you said before.
Yeah, exactly. And how old is your child now?
She'll be 8 in December, so she just entered 2nd grade.
Okay, and is she now able to speak in these different situations? Has she?
She really has blown us away. So we had a lot of changes. I mean, obviously COVID happened. So halfway through her first kindergarten year, she got pulled into distance learning. 2 months into her 1st grade year, we moved across country and started at a brand new school. Unfortunately, that school did not understand anxiety at all. So she got pretty bad there. She took a lot of steps backwards. So we ended up doing distance learning again. And now we're in a new school district, and this school really understands the importance of positive reinforcement and congratulating children on the small wins. And so she has just completely flourished. I got an email the first week of school from her teacher. They said she's a natural leader in the class. She's raising her hand and offering answers. She's just really—
oh my gosh, wow, what a turnaround.
Yes, I bet if I asked the kids in her class, like, would you ever think she wasn't able to talk even a year ago? They'd probably be like, no way, because the SM is, I would like to say, completely gone. Wow. I mean, we still have some work to do, but in school, she is amazing. There's even a time where another child was bullying somebody else, and she let the principal know, like, this is what happened. This is what I saw. What they're saying isn't what actually happened. So she's advocating for others. It's like, oh, finally, like, just a weight is just lifted. And I feel like I can enjoy seeing my daughter be a kid again.
Wow. Oh my gosh, what a turnaround. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Gosh, what a journey you've been on. So it was about 3.5 years?
Yeah, about 3 years is that it took to get us the diagnosis, to figure everything out. And now she's talking to all of her relatives, which she had never done before. So to see her grandpa, hear her voice, it's like, oh, it's everything.
Wow, yes. Oh, I've got goosebumps. Yeah, it's amazing. Wow. Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing your story. That's amazing to hear. So my next question was, what motivated you to start the summit? I'm guessing your story, but
yes. Yeah, just knowing that there were kids out there that didn't know what was going on with them, that every day they were at school, not being able to tell a teacher a funny story, or even just simply, I need to go to the bathroom, or somebody's picking on me. That just completely breaks my heart inside. And for parents to not know that's going on because their child is so fine at home, and then they're at school and they have no idea that they're not speaking and not advocating for themselves because teachers don't know enough about this. And so that's where it really came from. And again, with COVID and my parent support group, that kind of dissolved because I couldn't get together with these parents. And it just left a hole in my heart. Like, I know there's people out here around the world that are going through this or might go through this. And I want to take that away. I want to take all of the hardships we went through and take that away for other people. So one day I got a random email that was offering a free workshop on how to do a summit. And I'm like, well, I'll check this out. And then as I'm watching this, I'm like, oh my gosh, there is a need for an SM summit. How great would it be for people all around the world to come together, listen to professionals from all over the world, and get the help they need without having to leave home, without having to fork over thousands of dollars, without having to travel, all of this. And it just got me super excited. I'm like, I can do it.
Yeah.
So I did.
Wow. Oh my God, that's so amazing. Yeah. And you've now interviewed lots of people. I mean, there's been 2 summits so far?
Yep, I've done 2 summits. The first one you were a part of, which was amazing to have you. We had 12 people interviewed in that one. My last one had 9. And I think my next one here, I'm set to have about 7 or 8 people be interviewed. And I try to do kind of 50-50 when it comes to parents of children with selective mutism or people themselves that have gone through this journey, so that people can hear real stories, because you can learn a ton from a professional. I mean, they have a ton of knowledge, but there's just a little something extra when you know that somebody actually did these steps and did see the results. It makes you have a little bit more buy-in into that. So I've been so fortunate to meet some wonderful, amazing professionals around the world that are just as passionate or even more passionate about SM that I am. So I'm so thankful.
Oh, that's amazing. So you've obviously now interviewed all these people, all linked to SM, which is such a unique situation, because, you know, when I first started working with children with SM, I was the only person I knew who knew what selective mutism was. Yeah. Obviously now over the years, I've met lots of people who also work and have experience of SM, but we're kind of scattered around the world and there are not, so it's a real, I suppose you're in a very unique situation that you've spoken to all of these professionals. So first of all, are there any common themes that have come up from the professionals, first of all, and then any common themes that have come up from the people who have actually experienced SM?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing I've learned from the professionals is it's so important for a therapist, a teacher, a relative, to build rapport with a child with anxiety, and especially a child with selective mutism, because you can't expect a child to speak to somebody if their anxiety is through the roof. I often use the analogy of somebody who's afraid of dogs, and it's not like you're going to throw a dog or a person into a dog park who's afraid of dogs. They're not going to be able to do anything. They're not going to be able to move. They're going to be so scared. And so that's the same with a child with SM. You have to give them time to realize that they're safe, that this person in the room with them isn't going to cause them harm. And it may, again, for me, starting, I'm like, this is silly. Like, how silly is this, that you think that something bad's going to happen simply for speaking? But that's the reality of it. And I had to understand that. And so do other teachers and therapists and relatives, is that these children are not choosing this lifestyle. I mean, who would want to live their life not being able to speak and say, hey, I'm really hungry, or I really need to go to the bathroom, or man, I love this movie. It's just not, that's not realistic. So a lot of the professionals have said it's really important to build rapport. If you're a teacher and you have an SM student, get down to their level and say, hey, you know what? I'm so happy you're here. My job is not to yell at you or make you feel like you're not smart enough or not worthy enough to be here. I'm your friend, and we're gonna have a great year. And just things like that. It's like, oh, okay. I mean, some kids perceive a teacher as somebody that is an authoritative figure, and that all they're gonna do is just yell at them all day and make them do work and all of this. But if a teacher can just take that moment and let the child know, like, no, we're gonna have a great year. I can't wait to learn with you, and just simple things like that. And a lot of professionals too will say to take the expectation of speaking away. Again, when I heard this the first time, like, that doesn't make sense. Like, why would you take the expectation to speak away when you want them to speak? So again, you really have to reframe how you perceive speaking and communicating. And so by just taking that expectation away and allowing the child to communicate where they're comfortable, and then, like you say, those tiny little baby steps on different ways to communicate, that's what's really going to make the difference for that child. Not forcing them, not saying, I'm not going to help you if you don't speak to me, or, well, you can speak to that person just fine, why can't you speak to me? That's not going to help anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that is a great nuggets of wisdom. Yeah, and so as you say, those little things make such a big difference. If a teacher kind of has that little bonding moment with the child at the beginning of the year and says, look, we're going to have a great year, as you say, I'm not going to ask you any questions until you're ready, that just can literally be the difference between the child having sleepless nights to being able to sleep at night.
Right.
If they are aware that this person isn't going to put me on the spot, it just makes a world of a difference. So great advice.
Yeah, and I think after I've talked to a few people that have experienced SM through their life, they've all really talked about that feeling of being frozen. One of the young ladies I talked to the last summit, she said it literally felt like ice down in my throat, and that my throat was just cold and I couldn't get anything out. And I think that's important to realize as well, is again, they're not choosing this. Like, they physically cannot get a sound out. In their head, they're probably like, oh, my favorite color is blue, it's blue, it's blue. But there's a disconnect. They can't get their voice out. A lot of times they'll say, I just wanted that moment to end. And again, that's where us parents will jump in there and rescue them, because we want that moment to end for our child. But they really they have to kind of start having that support from their parents, that like, you can do this, let's have these little rewards. There's one mom of a child with SM, and she said, let's just make a worry box. She's like, I had a little random box, we're going to write all of our worries in it, and we're going to put it in the box, and then our worries are gone. So things like that seem to have helped to these adults now that have overcome their SM, just having that relationship with their parents and trusting that their parents really want to do what's best for them.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that is so key, because quite often parents will say that the child, actually some children get quite angry whenever the parent makes a comment about the fact they're not talking, or what should we do to help you with this. The child almost puts a wall up immediately, and they say, I don't want to talk about this, because they think that we are going to try to push them to talk, and it's their biggest fear. But rather, if the child sees that we're on one team, we're working together, we're if anything's too hard, we'll make it easier. Seeing the parent is helping them rather than pushing them, I suppose.
Yeah, and again, we use the how hard would it be too. So it's like, well, something's too hard, I'm not going to make you do it. If something's too easy, I know, it's like, I know you can do that too. Let's try something a little bit. And just those baby steps. Yeah,
definitely. So that was the main takeaway from the people themselves who had SM, the kind of physical response and the help from the parents.
Yeah, and I think too, a lot of them would say they kind of needed to find their niche. One of them was a dancer, and so just having that ability to express herself through dance, where she wasn't on a team where she had to worry about passing a ball to somebody or running bases and having everybody watch her. It was more individual within a team, and so that really helped her. I know some of them have used photography, have used writing poetry, painting. That definitely helps. It's just something, a good outlet for them to show people that, yes, I am an individual. I have all these wonderful attributes to myself. Just because I can't say them doesn't mean they're not there, and that they are a person. So that I think is important too for an SM child or anybody with anxiety, is just to have some sort of outlet. You can't keep it all in all the time, and just finding your niche. And it's hard, because even like the lady I talked about, who was the dancer, her mom's like, oh, you should do dance. And she's like, no, I'm not doing that. I can't do that. And so trying at that that one, they had friends from school that were in the same dance. So somebody that she was at least comfortable seeing and played with, that definitely helped. And then once she got in there, she's like, ooh, I like this. And then she was able to really make her career out of that. So parents, it can be very easy to get very discouraged when your child is crying. I mean, we did gymnastics for a while with our daughter, and it was hard to see her crying and refusing to go, but it's like, just take that first step, just sit on the mat with the kids. And as their anxiety lowers, then they can start doing the different stretches and the different tumbles and whatever they're working on. So parents, don't get discouraged, really talk to them and set up even goals in those situations too.
Yeah, great. So I was going to ask you what your biggest SM takeaway or learning has been from interviewing people for the summit. I'm assuming it'll be quite hard to choose one.
Well, there's still so much we need to learn about selective mutism. And what I'm finding is that it seems like there's a lot that has to do with obviously brain development and neural pathways, and even development within utero, and how our children have moved or didn't move as babies. And so there's still just so much to learn. And I get really excited about topics like rhythmic movement therapy or training and interoception, just having the child know what's going on within their body. And what's interesting, you asked too, like, what are some common themes? The more people I talk to about SM, they'll be like, oh yeah, our child walked really early too, like 9, 10, 11 months old. And what's interesting with that, so when a child crawls, certain reflexes get integrated within that child. So if they walk really early, they're not getting that opportunity for the reflexes to integrate. And this can cause certain reflexes to stay within the child. And that can cause issues such as selective mutism and anxiety and even bedwetting and all of these other things that, as I talk to people, like, oh yeah, we're dealing with that too. So there's a lot that can still be learned. And who knows what the future will hold if we actually get some research in more of the other things going on that we think might not be related to the SM, but really could be.
Wow, so interesting. Yeah, and I suppose it's really interesting because you speak to so many different people involved with SM from different angles, I suppose, and everyone has a unique perspective. Wow, so interesting.
Yes.
Do you have any other key messages that you would like to share about selective mutism?
I really think parents need to understand that take one day at a time. Don't get stuck in the what is the future going to hold for my child. Be present with them. I feel like I almost missed out on some of my daughter's childhood because I focused too much into the future and I wasn't at the present moment. There are going to be days that they do amazing, and there are going to be days that's like, what are we going to do? Like, nothing seems to be working. But again, focus on that day. If something didn't go well, that's okay. Like, there's another opportunity the next day or even an hour later. So really just understanding that this is going to take some time and educating people around you about it as well, so that everybody can be on the same page. Once we were finally understanding what was going on, we educated our extended family. And that's when we started seeing our daughter making eye contact with them. You know, when my mother-in-law would come over, she wouldn't just run up and give her a hug right away. She would talk to us for a little bit and then slowly move closer to our daughter and then just say like, oh, I love what you're wearing today. Or maybe we can do a puzzle together. I think that'd be really fun. And just all the rapport building. So yeah, I don't know if that was even 1 point or maybe 7. I don't know.
No, that's great. No, honestly, education is the key.
Yes.
Really. Educate everyone around the child so that everyone who interacts with the child knows how to approach them, because it's almost going back to that point of the teachers, having that chat with the child at the beginning of the year. If we make these tiny tweaks, it can make the world of a difference for a child with SM.
Absolutely.
So you've got another summit coming up in October. So October is Selective Mutism Awareness Month, so great timing.
Yes.
So can you tell us a bit about this summit? How will it be different from the others? Yeah,
so I'm nervously excited for this one because it's, again, something that's never been done before. And this one is going to be specifically for teens and adults with SM. There's a lot of research and a lot of discussions and a lot of books out there about SM and how it affects a young child, maybe 3 to 9 years old. But what happens when you don't know about SM and now your child is 13 and aren't speaking? What do you do? So that's what I really want to dive into with this next summit, is helping those parents out there that the steps might not be the same as a young child. Their brain is developing so much differently and understanding the world so much differently. How can we as teachers, therapists, relatives help a teen or somebody that has had SM their whole life? How can we interact with them to make their life a little bit better and to help encourage them to possibly overcome or to guide them into overcoming their SM?
That's great. That's really needed. You know, I get inquiries quite regularly from parents of teenagers, and they say there's just no help out there. You know, is there anything that you can do to help me?
Yeah.
Because there's no support out there for teenagers. So yeah, and adults equally.
Right.
So no, that's very much needed. So who are you able to say who will be speaking?
Well, I have a few professionals. So there's a couple from the US, there's a few from the UK. I have adults that have overcome SM. I have young adults that have overcome SM. I have parents of teens with SM. So I'm hoping it'll be just a wide variety. The questions may be generally the same within each interview, but I think a lot of the takeaways will be different. So if anybody's watching and they have questions about your teen, again, my child is young. I don't even know what a typical teen goes through. I can maybe pull things back from my teenage years, but I think I blocked a lot of that out. So if anybody has questions they want answers to, feel free to reach out or let Lucy know.
Yeah, and I'll put your contact details in the description below so
Perfect.
parents can also reach out to you.
Perfect.
And finally, so of course, after watching this, everyone wants to sign up to the summit, so including myself. So how can we sign up and attend the summit?
So the summit itself will run October 22nd through October 25th. It's all online, so you can register by going to smhelp.org. It's free to register. It's very simple. And then the first day of the summit, you will get an email. All the videos will be available starting at midnight Eastern Standard Time, which is the time zone I'm in. And I was trying to pick a time where everybody could benefit from it, which is hard to do with a worldwide summit. So I settled on midnight Eastern Time. So on that day, anybody who's registered will receive an email from me with a link and a password to access videos. So I usually have about 2 or 3 videos a day. The videos are no longer than an hour each. And it'll just give you an opportunity whenever you have a break in the day to sit down and watch the video. You'll have 24 hours to watch it. The next day at midnight, you'll get a new email or new link with a new password, and you'll access those videos. So there'll be 3 days like that. And then the last day will be all of the videos available again for 24 hours. So you'll have another opportunity to watch the videos at your own time. I also, the last summit, I started something new where I had a Facebook group that was a private group just for people that registered. So when the videos got uploaded, they were there the whole weekend. I didn't take them down. So if that's something you're interested in, it's like, I'm busy all day this day, but I still want the videos, you can join that Facebook group. And plus there's going to be other people that are watching the same exact videos as you that could have questions you can relate to. You can find people within your area that you can connect with. So it's just a way to bring everybody around the world together to learn about SM. So that's kind of the general how the summit will work.
Great. Wow. Thank you so much. I will definitely put a link to the summit, to the sign up to the summit in the description below so that parents can easily access that. So thank you so much, Kelly. This was super interesting to hear your story and your takeaways from the summits you've already done. I'm really excited for the October summit as well. Thank you for being here and sharing with us all.
Yes, thank you so much for having me and for letting people know about the summit. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it useful. Please don't forget to Go over to the Confident Children Selective Mutism Therapy Facebook page, where I regularly share resources all about selective mutism, as well as photos of Mia sometimes. And please also subscribe to this YouTube channel. Have a lovely rest of the day, everyone. Take care. Bye.